So I'd hung out a little bit with Jerry, and he kind of always like recognized me. My impression was that he was just an intense guy. And then Layne, on the other hand, was kind of like the opposite, where Layne was a totally chill hang. And I never really saw him outside the studio, but when he was in the studio, he was super relaxed and really friendly, like super down to earth. And I remember this like left a huge impression on me. And I'm sure we've talked about this before, but when I met Layne, he was the kind of guy that would just walk in and be like, "Hey man, what's your name? And how long you worked here?" And he would share with me. I remember one day he said he had just helped his dad load some firewood in his truck. And then he would just sit on the couch and like literally watch cartoons. And I'm sure I told this story before, but he ate cereal and he filled out the back of the cereal box. And it's just like, yeah, he was just a total pleasure and joy to hang out with. He's just funny. And so I don't know, like what was he like outside the studio? That's a really good question. I just, that's kind of the code in the studio. Like, I think when those guys would show up, they'd already, what any of the partying that they did or whatever, maybe they were hungover, but they'd always sort of show up late in the day, all at different times. And they always seemed to sort of have chaos going on in their lives, but they'd show up and hang out for quite a while and get settled and then just pick up an instrument and it started happening.
So in general, from your experience working with Alice in Chains, were there any particular microphones that Layne preferred using, or was he not picky?
I would say on the gear wise, and you're asking if Layne had any specific, my impression was Layne, and I think everybody sort of knows this, the history was sort of Jerry was really like the overseer of everything of Alice in Chains in general, was kind of the main creative force from my perspective of when they came in the studio. It was like really Jerry was kind of overseeing everything, and Layne would really just come into the studio when he was needed. He typically just hung out on the couch. Either he just wasn't there or he'd be hanging out on the couch watching cartoons and eating cereal, and generally stayed out of like Jerry's way during most of the creative process. So it just seemed like, okay, now it's time for vocals, bring Layne in. That's what it seemed like from my end. So Layne would just come in and we'd have the mic set up. There was no comments or, Layne just went into the booth and started singing. So I feel like he had no specific, care or interest in what he was singing in.